Ramping up the rhetoric, Houthi rebels in Yemen say they did it. The United States says Iran did it, and Iran insists they didn't do it. I'm Imran Gupta, and today's newsmaker is the attack on Saudi oil facilities. One attack, three players, and three different sides to the story. One thing is clear. The world's largest crude processing plant was the target of an airstrike. What's unclear is who was behind it and how they pulled it off. In the 4 days following the attack in Saudi Arabia, the UK and Germany have urged collective action. Israel says it's prepared to be drawn into the conflict, and Moscow urges caution while offering to sell the Saudis Russian-made missiles to better protect itself. This is all happening against the backdrop of the failing Iran nuclear deal, increasing tensions between the US and its allies on the one hand and Iran on the other. And this is why proof of who exactly did it is important. If Iran directly attacked Saudi Arabia, will it draw the US into a war with Tehran that everybody fears? Natalie Perhernan reports.
Repairs on the world's largest oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia are well underway. After last weekend's attacks, the kingdom says it's going to fully restore its oil supplies by the end of the month. But the mission to maintain regional stability appears to still be in the cleanup stages. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have claimed responsibility for the strikes. They say they used drones to carry them out, something they've done before, but on a smaller scale. Iranian President Hussain Rouhani says the rebels' actions are understandable because they're fighting a Saudi-led coalition in Yemen's civil war.
کاری که مردم یمن انجام میدن دفاع مشروع از خودشون هست، حمله متقابل هست، راه حل اساسی هم پایان دادن به این تجاوز هست. ما معتقدیم راه حل یمن یه راه حل سیاسی هست.
US officials say Iran is behind the attack. Tehran denies any involvement. Saudi Arabia says initial evidence shows the weapons used were Iranian-made. The incident shows how vulnerable it is to further strikes. Riyadh is a key US ally. And while President Donald Trump has jumped to the kingdom's defense, he won't explicitly say who's to blame.
I said that we think we know who it was, but I didn't say anybody. But certainly it would look to most like it was Iran.
Pressed on whether the attack could lead to conflict with Iran, Trump had this to say.
Do I want war? I don't want war with anybody. I'm somebody that would like not to have war.
This incident comes at a time when world powers have been trying to ease tensions between the US and Iran over the fractured 2015 nuclear deal. Trump withdrew the US from the agreement last year and reimposed crippling economic sanctions against Tehran. Iran is no longer fully compliant with the terms of the deal. Before the attack, there had been talk of Trump meeting with his Iranian counterpart. Not anymore.
If the US took back its words, if they repent and return to the agreement they breached, if they became a member country of the contract parties, then they can participate in the company of countries negotiating with Iran. Without doing so, no negotiation will take place in no level between the authorities of the Islamic Republic of Iran and Americans.
The hunt for definitive proof of who's responsible for the oil attack is ongoing. But it's already made the diplomatic balancing act in the region that much harder for everyone involved. Natalie Perhernan, The Newsmakers.
Let's begin our discussion with pro-Houthi journalist Hussain Albukhaiti, who joins me now from Sana'a. And in Riyadh is Salman Al-Ansari. He's the founder and president of the Saudi American Public Relations Affairs Committee. Gentlemen, good to have you on the program. Hussain, the Houthis are not known for their sophisticated drones. This was the Iranians, wasn't it? And the Houthis are taking the credit.
I think this is just some kind of lies that Saudi Arabia and its coalition and United States try to use just to find a reason to gather, to attack maybe Iran in the future. We should remember that Saudi Arabia, just since the first drone attack on Saudi Arabia about 4 months ago, which have targeted the main pipeline between east and west of Saudi Arabia. After that, they have been bombing Yemen for the last 4 months, saying that they are targeting a drones factory. So how can you target a drone factory in Yemen? Meanwhile, you say that those drones either is coming from somewhere else, from Iraq or that, from Iran. Even though we have this blockade on Yemen for the last 5 years, they're not allowing food and medicine to come in. All ships are being searched by Saudi Arabia and its coalition and United Nations, and all port and airport and border crossing is under the control of the Saudi-backed forces. So how can Iran be able to smuggle those drones, or at least to smuggle those type of missiles, especially long-range missiles, which they are like
so just
between
for clarity,
10 to
Hussain,
12 meter long.
For absolute clarity, you believe that this was completely the work of the Houthis as an act of war against the Saudis because Yemen is under war. The Houthis did this and they produced the drone on their own with no help from anybody else.
Yes, this is exactly what happened. It's the Houthi have produced this drone and they are upgrading those drones, and they have the manpower in Yemen to produce those drones. And you know, those times it's really easy to get information that you need about how drones work, how to upgrade them. And as you say, this is the response to what the Saudi and the war on Yemen. And I just want to mention one more sentence. As Mr. Erdogan said, the president of Turkey, when he was asked about the attack on the on Saudi refinery, he said we should remember who started attacking Yemen first. And this, I think this simple answer summarized the entire thing.
I want to ask Salman Al-Ansari, when we look at the context of the war, the Saudis strike the Houthis in Yemen, a lot of the time with American weapons and American help. Why is it so hard to believe that, yes, this might have been the Houthis, probably with some Iranian help and probably with some Iranian expertise, because this is the context of the war? Why does it have to be the Iranians and not the Houthis? Salman?
Yeah, thank you, Imran. Yeah, I think it's very ironic when you see the Houthi, which is an Iranian-backed militia, to be saying, we are the ones who did it. Hit us, do not hit Iran. So it can tell you a lot who is controlling whom and how Iran is projecting its power through this despicable terrorist group, which I think will be taken seriously by the West to be put in the terrorist list. So we should forget about the Houthis for a moment. Now we are talking about the 0 hour. It's the time to show to the radical Iranian regime that all its militias and all its works, because we have seen that there are a lot of reports that are leaking from US officials that the directions of the missiles or the drones or also the crews, because there are different definitions of what the crews are. So things will be clearer just within half an hour to 1 hour, when the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense will be putting the evidence and all the pieces of evidence and proofs of the Iranian responsibility, full responsibility. We should not be fooled by the radical Iranian regime that wants to say that these are the works of these groups, not mine, so I am acting with impunity. No, Iran will not act with impunity anymore. It's the time when we look at the facts as they are. We have to name things by their names. Iran is the largest sponsor of terrorism. It has been supporting Houthis, it has been supporting Hezbollah, it has been supporting more than 75 Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. It has been supporting some brutal regimes like the Bashar al-Assad regime. This regime should really be put responsible, and this will not only be by condemnations and by some sanctions. No, we will very soon, I believe, as a Saudi citizen, we will be taking the right measures to communicate with the Iranian regime in the language they understand, which is power.
Okay, Hussein, the point that Salman made, that the mere fact that the Houthis are saying that we did it, not the Iranians, shows who's the boss here. You're willing to protect your owners as such.
No, I mean, look, I mean, in a war, I mean, let's say what the Saudi, I mean, they are right. I mean, we can just imagine that they are right. Those weapons are coming from Iran. What difference it will make? Saudi is fully supported by the United States. All the weapons from United States, satellite image, information, coordination, fueling. Saudi fighter jet is from the United States. Channel 4, British Channel 4. In a report, they have said that British personnel inside Saudi Arabia, they are doing 95% of the work. Only Saudi fighter, the Saudi pilot is doing 5%. This means that it doesn't matter, but the main question, who started this war? I mean, if Houthi have Russian weapons, if they have weapons come from another country, will you say why you are receiving weapons from Russia, but while you are receiving all the help, all the support from the United States and from Britain and from other country? They are even using mercenary from Sudan, mercenary from some American mercenary company to protect their border, and still they blame the other side why you are hitting us with an Iranian-made weapons.
Okay.
If it's Iran who is attacking you, why don't you respond to Iran?
Okay.
They don't have the courage to attack Iran because they failed, as they say, to
that's part of the reason why we're having this discussion.
Which they say is a proxy.
Okay, Hussain, and that's part of the reason why we're having this discussion, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to go on the ground in Sana'a with you, and also draw some attention to the fact that there's a horrendous war happening in Yemen right now, which is a part of the problem. But we thank you very much, Hussain, for joining us once more on the Newsmakers. Now, while Salman Al-Ansari stays with us, let's broaden out the discussion and go to Tehran and speak with Seyed Mostafa Khoshcheshm. He's an Iranian affairs analyst and professor at the University of Applied Sciences in Iran. And in Los Angeles is Adam Weinstein. He's a political analyst and a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. Adam, help me understand, how important is this to the United States that there's a difference between an Iranian ally possibly hitting the Saudis and Iran itself directly hitting the Saudis? Is it the difference between war and peace?
Well, traditionally there would be a difference because states that engage in covert conflict with a level of plausible deniability, which is one of the hallmarks of the way Iran engages in conflict, do so at times to avoid an escalation. In fact, Professor Austin Carson from University of Chicago had an interesting article in the Washington Post the other day about this from a political science perspective. I recommend your viewers read it.
Okay.
But from the Trump administration's perspective, a direct attack from Iran would certainly give them more legitimacy in ramping up things with Iran and perhaps engaging in a military strike.
Okay, plausible deniability, Mostafa Khoshcheshm. Is the Iranian denial a part of the game? Is it taken as fact that, yes, we probably hit the Saudis, but we can't fully come out and say so? Well, I can't hear you, Mostafa Khoshcheshm. Okay, we're going to get his mic up in a second. So, Mostafa, if you can hear me, listen, we lost your mic there for a second. We're going to get you back in a moment. Let me just take that and pass it on to Salman before we come back to Mostafa. Is that the game theory here? Is that what you're thinking, that the Iranians are doing it, but perhaps in such a way that there's still some plausible deniability, because that's a part of the conflict also?
Yeah, I think we have to look at two things. First, theoretical kind of evidence is that Iran has been squeezed, has not been able to sell its oil. It went from 2.5 million barrels per day to 500,000, and most of them are sold in the black market. So they think that in their interest to show some kind of projection of force, to show that the US and the international community and the regional partners should not punish Iran anymore. But I think they had a big miscalculation, because they were hoping and thinking that the US president and because of the elections that it's coming, etc., that he will never take any military action or any forceful action to push back against the Iranian regime. I think this is a very big miscalculation by the Iranian regime.
Okay.
The other aspect, which is the technical proofs, it will be shown within half an hour.
Okay, so we're looking forward to seeing what's
clear to the whole world, and there will be an international consensus.
Yeah, we're going to try.
Sure that
we're looking forward to seeing
international consensus, including the allies of Iran.
Right. Let's see what's going to be presented as evidence. Right, Mostafa Khoshcheshm, I promise you, Donald Trump's not trying to sabotage your microphone, because I've been made aware that we can hear you now. So, go ahead, sir. Plausible deniability. Did Iran do it? But it needs to deny it as a part of war.
Well, as a matter of fact, Iran has never been shy of stressing its support for Hezbollah, Palestinian groups, and others. It's been declaring its support, material and diplomatic support, arms support, funding for Hezbollah, Hamas, and others, but not for Ansarullah of Yemen. When it comes to the Yemenis, Supreme Leader of Iran has stressed, at least very recently on one occasion, he stressed publicly that the country is under siege. If it weren't under siege, then we would have provided them with any kind of help that they requested, but we cannot. That's why Iran's support is limited to diplomatic, political, and spiritual support for the Yemeni Ansarullah movement. But here is a point. Maybe there needs to be a very great bravo for the media outlets throughout the world. For years, defenseless people, civilians, have been targeted by the Saudis. Even according to Amnesty International, precision striking munition has been used by the Saudis on civilian targets and population, and nobody cared about it. As soon as the Yemenis started attacking not the people of Saudi Arabia, but the oil facilities of Saudi Arabia, the whole world feels that needs to show some sensitive response and reaction to this story. Fine, but why are they showing so much care about humanity, but they still continue, I mean, the US, Europeans, they still continue rendering support, any kind of support that you might imagine, including arms shipments, hundreds of billions of dollars
That's a fair
to
point
the Saudis,
in a certain context.
whose rulers are not just killing people, but also they imprisoned.
There's a certain. It's a fair point.
The prime
in a
minister
certain context,
of
but not
an independent country and butchered a journalist.
Okay, but not on this show, because we discuss all of this. We discuss Yemen. We discuss the war in Yemen. Salman will even tell you about the discussions we've had on Yemen here, where he defended the Saudi perspective, right? So the kind of whataboutery doesn't apply to this particular show. Certainly. Adam Weinstein, Donald Trump just tweeting as we speak that he has instructed Secretary of State Pompeo to substantially increase sanctions on the Iranians. Is that the only real tool that the US president has to play with here, Adam? Because besides that, what else is he going to do?
Well, sanctions can provide a tool if there's an off-ramp or if there's an alternative to the pressure that sanctions provide. Unfortunately, because the U.S. left the JCPOA, there are no direct communications or channels of communications or even opportunities for backdoor diplomacy that are currently open as far as I'm aware. Of course, other countries in the region, Oman is just an example, can always provide that. So I definitely think sanctions are a better alternative to a military strike, but I'm a bit suspicious or dubious about the efficacy of sanctions in this environment.
And just for absolute clarity, that's Mnuchin, right? That's the Treasury. The Treasury applies the sanctions. So, more sanctions on the way. How do you receive that information, Mostafa Khoshcheshm, while we're still not absolutely clear about how it happened, who did it? Even when you read outlets such as NPR, they say that US intelligence officials have stated to them that there is circumstantial evidence that the Iranians themselves launched this attack and not the Houthis and so on. Even though we don't have finality on who did it, and the US is not saying it for sure, they're still ramping up the sanctions via the Treasury. How do you react to that as an Iranian?
Okay. Well, first of all, the United States and Saudi Arabia are doing their best in order to escape this embarrassment that the state-of-the-art and sophisticated technology they've been using allegedly to protect Saudi Arabia, including the Patriot missile shields and other air defense systems, they have failed in war and in confrontation against an empty-handed nation like the Saudis, so like the Yemenis, I'm sorry, and they are embarrassed, so they are trying to project the blame. But for Americans, there is also another incentive here. They've been trying hard in order to use the sanctions and the military threat in order to bring Tehran to the negotiating table. They have failed. Now, although the Europeans have been in compliance with the United States in economic sector, their private sector has been in compliance with the U.S. unilateral sanctions against Iran, their states, their governments have been stressing their complaints and opposition to the U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA. Now the Donald Trump administration is trying hard in order to misuse the situation, take advantage of this incident in order to bring him into alliance with his view and increasing pressure, this time increasing political pressures against Iran in order to widen its presence also in the Strait of Hormuz or in the Persian Gulf, to lay more and more pressure on Tehran, to push Tehran to the negotiating table.
Right.
Otherwise, these are all speculations, and despite all the allegations they have already made, remember they were raising similar claims about ballistic missile technology, and despite the hilarious show by Nikki Haley, even the European allies, NATO allies, never bought their claims. So what they are doing is just raising assumptions, speculations, but to wrap it up, to cut it short, I need to say that if I am to rely on any kind of intel or information, I would never rely on intel coming from a state whose president and commander-in-chief is a liar-in-chief, according to the Western media outlets, whose Secretary of State stressed and acknowledged to the media a few months ago that when he headed the CIA, he and his colleagues were trained on how to lie, how to do theft, and how to deceive people.
Okay. But, I mean, everybody can play this game, right? Iranian state media still periodically runs 9/11 was an inside job stories, right? So everybody's playing this game. There's a lot to throw at everyone here. I want to ask Salman Al-Ansari about who might help you if you want to escalate this. We have the French and the Germans saying, hold on, let's not escalate here. Let's find out all the facts. Let's make sure that maybe we can revive the Iran nuclear deal here. If the Saudis and the Americans really want to ramp up the pressure on the Iranians, who's going to help you? Doesn't seem as if anybody has the appetite for it.
Yeah. First of all, allow me to comment a little bit of what your honorable guest have mentioned. I think the Iranian regime is the biggest country that uses logical fallacies. It's full of logical fallacies. The Iranian regime, with the concept of whataboutism, is in its DNA. So we cannot get along and have a constructive kind of engagement with the current Iranian regime at all whatsoever. The second thing, when it comes to your question, look, Saudi Arabia is not in need of anybody. Let's be very clear. Saudi Arabia is the heart of the Arab and Muslim world. Saudi Arabia is the central bank of energy in the whole world. Saudi Arabia has not yet projected its power in the region because it's not an expansionist country like the radical Iranian regime. But at the time of the 0 hour, Saudi will take the right actions, and it will be the finishing actions
of
the radical Iranian regime.
Salman, what does that mean?
Let's be very clear. Right now, it means a lot. It means that the Iranian regime has been, for the last 4 decades, since the radical revolution started in 1979, up till now, what did we see from Iran? Other than destruction, blood, terrorist support. And look, your guest, Mr. Seyed Mostafa, himself said it, that they are not shy, and Iran is not shy of saying to the whole world that they are supporting terrorist militias like Hezbollah and Hamas. Just in front of everybody.
Their parameters are different. Okay. They don't consider them to be
we don't
terrorists.
have to.
Okay.
This is their thing. Okay, but internationally, mostly considered to be terrorist. Okay. So when you go and try to use your proxies, your militias, to completely have this kind of disruptive sabotage attacks against the region, what would you expect from the region? Would you expect them to be like, okay, let's talk?
I'm still curious to find out what 0 hour means. Okay, Salman, listen. Okay, we have 25 seconds left on the program. I don't have enough time to get in another word from anyone here, and I apologize for that. But gentlemen, it's been fascinating talking to all of you. We will no doubt be following this conversation, following the story, and continuing the conversation on the Newsmakers. Hope to have you on the show again sometime soon. Adam, Mostafa, and Salman, thanks again. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of the Newsmakers. Bye-bye.